Hello everyone, I'm feeling delighted to be a part of this beautiful event, and I kindly appreciate the organizing committee, first of all, for having me as a speaker today. So thank you to begin with. And today our journey will be about absolute truth. Therefore, I would like to begin with a very famous statement about truth. And that is, I am lying. Have your time right now, and please try to tell me if I am lying indeed while I'm saying this, referring to itself. Have your time right now. And could you please raise your hand if you think that I am lying indeed? Could you please? Thank you. Could you please raise your hand again if you think that I'm telling the truth? All right, thanks for the feedback. But the bad news is, none of you are on the correct side. So today, we will hopefully face our inadequacy to be able to determine such certain statements are true or not in general. There we set off for a quest on seeking absolute truth. What is truth then? We all might take the notion of truth for granted in our daily lives because we are not harmed by not knowing it in any means. But if we think of at the philosophical level, which shapes some very crucial frames like ethics, politics, religion, and science, what's true or not must be carefully investigated, at least for the sake of a better world. The most easily understood definition of the truth of a statement, the truth of a sentence, is derived from the great Aristotle. He defines it in the following way. The truth of a sentence consists in its agreement with reality. This sounds very plausible. But okay, what does he mean? First of all, let me give you an instance on what he means. Let's take the statement of the moon is made of chocolate. The moon is made of chocolate is true if it happens to be the case that the moon is made of chocolate, while we can empirically verify it. However, this naive approach cannot fit in the realm of mathematics for two reasons. One, there may not be a corresponding reality to your truth. And secondly, and probably more importantly, even if we assume that such a reality exists, it may still be inaccessible. So, the question of existence, the question of what is there, lies at the heart of most of the philosophical discussions. The questions like, do flying elephants exist? Or do parallel lines exist? Or is there an apple on the ground? Do have different answers due to their different contexts. Okay, then, but if we stick the case to mathematics, let's say, which deals with nature of things, and thus has a word to claim about truth, there are mainly three approaches. The first group, logicists, saying that mathematics, all of the mathematical objects exist in the Platonic realm. Tribute to Plato, by the way. In the Platonic realm that they are independent of human nature. They are independent of space and time and everything else, basically. So they exist in a very transcendental way. Whereas intuitionists say that some of the mathematical objects exist. What does this mean? Intuitionists regard mathematics as a constructive mental activity deeply rooted in some true statements, which are intuitively verified. So for an intuitionist, there is no infinity. Instead, there is potential infinity. And very famous statement by an extraordinary mathematician, Leopold Kronecker. God made the whole numbers, and the rest is the work of man. And finally, the third group, formalists, saying that none of the mathematical objects exist. What does this mean again? They consider mathematics as a game of chess, like a game of chess, whose rules are some logical inference rules, and whose truths are the assumptions, the axioms, and some conclusions that can be derived from those axioms. So it's like a game of chess. And to this part, this is like a prerequisite or so. Now the story begins. In 1904, a mathematician, again an extraordinary mathematician of his not of his time, but all times, David Hilbert sets a goal as a program for mathematicians to check two possible properties of mathematics. One, consistency. What does consistency mean? Assuring that there are no contradictory statements, okay, hopefully. Two, completeness, meaning that any true statement, any mathematical true statement can be derived from your facts, basic assumptions. Hopefully we will achieve this. We would achieve this. Long story short, David Hilbert was in 1904, and after 27 years of attempting to give a positive response to David Hilbert, a young mathematician, and a logician again, named Kurt Gödel, who is highly keen on linguistics, language, and thus what's true or not, gave a very negative response to David Hilbert, saying that publishing a literally groundbreaking paper for science and philosophy. And that paper is called On Formally Undecidable Propositions in Principia Mathematica and Related Systems. What's that all about? There he proves two very complicated facts. One, opposing David Hilbert. Any consistent formal system within which certain amount of elementary arithmetic can be carried out, so you can do some arithmetic within, has to be incomplete. Meaning that there are some statements that are neither disproved nor proved. So there will always be some problems. And two, his second proposition, his second theorem indeed, for such formal systems, the consistency of the system cannot be proved within itself. So, of course, I know that this is very complicated facts for a non-mathematician, so let me elaborate on those. Okay. Let me give you an instance on what Kurt Gödel meant to say. Consider two sets. Let's say one, the set of natural numbers, which I'm almost sure most of you know, from 0, 1, 2, 3, and towards infinity. And our second set is the set of real numbers. That can be regarded as each and every point on the number line, from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay. So the former one, the set of natural numbers, has apparently infinitely many elements. I think it's obvious. But in a countable way. What does countable mean? If you're allowed infinite amount of time, you can count them without forgetting any. Let me do this. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's count ourselves to have counted all the natural numbers, but for real numbers, you cannot count them even if you're allowed infinite amount of time, because you cannot formulate You cannot formulate an argument in order to avoid forgetting any, because they're so dense. Consider all the points on the number line. They're so dense. There are too many. How can you count all of them? So, we have at least two types of infinities. The natural numbers, infinitely many, but in a countable way. Real numbers, again infinitely many, but in an uncountable way. Why are these two examples useful? There is one concrete proposition, not proposition, let's say claim in mathematics about these two sets. And it goes like this. There is no other types of infinities between the natural numbers and the real numbers. This claim has a specific name, the continuum hypothesis, and it's very interesting to see that, it's very interesting to observe that this claim cannot be deduced from the axioms, the assumptions that mathematics is built upon. So it is undecidable, as an example. Therefore, we see that the rest is not proving its truth, but instead believing it or not. Therefore, we see that we lack of any argumentation for such statements. All right. I know that this is a very dark and pessimistic page in the history of science and, let's say, philosophy. But one last shot as a reputation can be made towards Gödel's work, and it might be as follows. What if the inadequacy of such decision-making process sources from our choice of axioms, our choice of assumptions? I mean, what if we failed at choosing the right axioms, if there were any? The bad news again, even if we chose the best axioms, Gödel's work on the limitations is stable no matter what the axioms, what the assumptions are used, because this proof is focused on the inherent extent that the formal systems can achieve. Right. So we will lack of any logical argumentation for certain statements. By this consideration, the attempt of David Hilbert and the negative response from Kurt Gödel sets a shocking barrier for the human's perception on universe, basically kind of bringing them into line and declaring that absolute knowledge remains forever beyond our reach. That's the punchline, in my humble opinion. And the moral of the story shall be, let's say, the opportunity for us, for the human to face our inadequacy, insufficiency, realize our limits, keep our humility, and thus respect to nature, respect the others. Thank you so much.